It's small, it's cute, it's well built, it's well priced, and it's got Bluetooth. But with so many coffee scales out in the market right now, is the Bookoo Themis scale worth your money? Bookoo means not bitter in Mandarin. It was formed by a group of friends that met at a tech club and are coffee enthusiasts. Well, actually, they weren't all coffee enthusiasts. One was a coffee enthusiast. The others didn't really like coffee because they found that it was in fact too bitter. And that coffee enthusiast friend brought them to a specialty coffee and opened up their world and their mind to what coffee could be. And so that is the origin and the name of Bookoo. It is not bitter. I'm excited because there's a new player on the market and they came out strong with new products, and whenever there's more competition on the market, I just find that's always good in this domain. It means better products. I've had a few companies reach out to me with coffee scales to review, but if you don't have anything new to offer, at the end of the day, if it's just a coffee scale that can tare and timer, it's not really that innovative. When I got an email from Bookoo, I looked into their product and I found this interesting. So they did send this to me for review. Was not paid for review. They have no say whatsoever in my review or anything I get to say or do in my review. And I did really find this interesting because one, I've been looking for a small coffee scale, and two, it had Bluetooth, and three, it just looked really nice. This costs $129 US, about 180 Canadian. You can also save 5% with my discount code, which I will link in the description. By the way, purchasing through those discount codes and through the affiliate links, it costs you nothing. You actually save a bit of money. And it gives me a little bit of a kickback, which helps support this channel and lets me buy new gear. And it also really helps because then companies will keep sending me products for reviewing as well. And I get to discover some really cool things like this. So thank you in advance. Currently, I believe they ship out of China, but they have been talking about establishing a shipping center out of Germany and the US as well to expedite and lower shipping costs. First of all, let's talk about the design. It is super cute, obviously. It looks like a little Tamagotchi, and even when you turn it on, it makes a little noise. It will show you the serial number, and then when you shut it off, it will tell you sleeping, and it will also give you the percentage of battery life left on this. You can also access the battery life on the app. It's got nice rounded corners, very modern. Oh, I keep turning it off. The screen is very bright, very easy to read. Dot matrix, good contrast. That dot design language carries out throughout the design. So when you change different modes, there are 3 modes to choose from. You'll have 1 dot, 2 dot, or 3 dot, depending on if you're mode 1, 2, or 3. Whenever Bluetooth is connected, you'll have a blue dot that will appear. When you have low battery, you'll have a red dot that'll appear. And low battery means when you have 10% or less. And then when you're charging, it's a moving red dot. One thing that can be maybe difficult and really not the end of the world is it could be a bit difficult, especially if you're new to the scale, to figure out which side is the front and back. There is a logo, there is a bit of directionality, and also, if you're unsure, then there's the USB plug on the back. There's a little rubber piece here. It's not stuck onto the scale. The unfortunate thing is that if you do lose this, well, you lose it. I did ask them about what if you get water in here. This is IPX4 waterproof. They said unless you deliberately pour water into here and then plug it, should be okay. I'll link the video below, but Lance Hedrick actually did a breakdown and took this thing apart. He showed that the construction of this thing was built very well, and especially for its price. There's also 2 long rubber pieces to help stabilize it and also prevent it from moving. It measures 3.15 inches by 3.15 inches by 0.6 inches. This would fit pretty much every single espresso tray I can think of. This would fit Flair easily, and other small manual espresso machines. This is great for espresso. This could be more difficult for pour over if you're using a big carafe, for example. If you're using a small cup, this would also work. This is really great if you want to travel, because I've wanted to travel with different coffee scales before, but they're always big. You can buy this case separately, but this case will add bulk, but it is very protective, and that way you can easily throw it into your bag without any issues. There's even little mesh netting here if you want to put a USB cable, which does actually come with the box as well. There is this rubber pad that you could, I guess, use as a tamping pad. It's quite small. That comes on here, and you don't have to necessarily use this depending on how hot your liquid is. I have stopped using it, but this would help prevent any type of scratches that could develop on the surface. And also, if you put something that's really hot, so let's say you do have a carafe with pour over or some sort of cup that doesn't have a thick base, this would just help protect it a little bit in terms of wild temperature shocks. It should be okay, but it's just an extra reassurance. I don't love how floppy it is because it is a pretty slippery surface and it could be a little annoying to grab and hold. I would have loved to have seen instead it would ruin the design tiny bit, but to have slightly like some slits on both sides, and then to have this wrap around like a U with little clips almost that I could clip onto here somehow, that would have been my preference so that it would be easier to keep on and remove if I wanted to. Speaking of the top surface, this is tempered glass. It is not plastic, which means it's harder to scratch and break. It doesn't mean it is shatterproof. If you do drop it, you may be okay, but there may be that off chance that you do hit it in an odd way. The glass does stick up over the casing here, so if you end up dropping it in a bad corner, you know, well, that could happen. Tempered glass is better than plastic as well though, because it has better accuracy, better sensitivity. So when you look at Bluetooth coffee scales on the market, this is definitely one of the cheaper ones, but it is very well built and is feature packed and is compatible with not only their app, but is compatible with other apps as well. Now, in terms of specs, this is truly just a coffee scale. It is only grams, there's no unit changes. It is 0.1 grams to 1,000 gram maximum. It even has that information on the scale itself, which is really cool. It's like very technical looking, the whole front panel, but you also get information on it, which I love. I just love this see-through look. You basically have two buttons and you don't see anything, but they're very sensitive. It's touch. You have the left button to turn it on, and you get your little Tamagotchi noise. Right will be your weight. There's no grams on there. There's 2 digits and then 1 decimal point and then another number. There might be a possibility in the future to change the units because there is a toggle unit, except when you click it, nothing happens. Other parts of this setting in the app work, but not the toggle unit. There is one slight negative, is because it is small, especially if you bit fingers or if you're manipulating the scale while you're doing things, you could accidentally perhaps put it to sleep because you accidentally pressed this corner. If you're moving things around, like see, I just did it now. Grab it by the sides when you're moving it around. That'll remove any of those problems. Like don't lobster hand it. You gotta claw it. There are 3 modes on the scale that you change by long pressing the tare button, which is on the right. Your right will always be your weight. That never changes. It's your left, depending on your mode, that will change. The first one is flow rate. Value that you'll get on the left will be your flow rate, grams per second. If you're doing espresso or pour over, it can be helpful to look at those numbers while you're pouring or doing espresso to see if you kind of are in the right ballpark for your pour if you're doing pour over, or your right flow rate and pressure if you're doing espresso. But the numbers do fluctuate, so you would use an app to get the general curve of your flow rate. Because I do espresso, because I have the Slayer mod, I do tend to look at it, and I know that when I'm close to the 2 gram and it's around that number, although it's fluctuating quite a bit, then I know I'm generally in the right ballpark of my flow rate that I find works well with Slayer mod on my Breville Dual Boiler. If you long press and you go into the second mode, you now are in timer mode. To start and stop the timer, you hit the left side where the timer is. So it's all very intuitive. Your third mode is auto. Basically, it auto tares and it will auto start the timer as soon as it detects a flow rate change. It detects liquid. So for espresso, not that helpful for me because I have, first of all, a timer on my Breville Dual Boiler, but also I start my timer the moment I start the brew. As soon as I start the water and the tank is going, so when I press the manual button on my machine, the timer starts, and it already starts on my machine. I don't find the auto useful. I also don't find the auto useful for pour over. When I poured the grounds into my Kalita Wave, it detected as liquid. It detected that I was starting to do the pour when I was still in my whole tearing phase. So I would have just had to modify my workflow slightly so that I could pour the grounds into my Kalita separately and then put it on my cup in like one swift motion so that it doesn't accidentally think instead that it's a flow from like a pour from coffee hitting a cup or me pouring in the pour over. So auto for me is just not that useful. In this coffee scale and in any coffee scale I've owned, I just find auto more cumbersome than to just manually tare and then start the timer when I'm ready to start the timer. But that's just me. I'm curious. Comment below if you actually use the auto mode. Like me, I'm sure that if you just get working into your workflow, it could save time. I guess it could save time. I wish for the first and second mode that there was some text information that, for example, here it would say flow. In the second mode, it would say time, because in the third mode, it says auto. And all are 4 letters and could easily fit. Hopefully they'll update this with a firmware update. On the back as well, if you're unsure about which mode you're on, there is a quick little reference guide, 1, 2, or 3 dots and which mode you're on. It's ultra responsive, very fast, very sensitive, almost too sensitive sometimes. If you could blow on it, the numbers will fluctuate. It's got long battery life. It is a 500 milliampere hour rechargeable battery. You could use it for 24 hours, full 24 hours with one charge. And you would need to charge it every like 1 to 2 months. In my experience with how I use it, I tend to turn it off on its own. Then it lasted about 2 months, which is great because that means I charge it 6 times a year, which is nothing. I do manually turn it off whenever I'm done, just to preserve battery life for between charges, but also the overall battery life because I'm using the battery less. You can also change the standby time through the app. I think the default it started with was 15 minutes and I changed it down to 5, and that was enough for me. I could probably even change it to less, but I have it as 5 in case I forget to turn it off or walk away, but like I said, I manually shut it off most of the time. When it's low battery, there's a little red dot, that's 10% and less, 1 hour to fully charge. Even within 30 minutes, it was really fast to charge. It is USB-C. One of the big features of this, the Bluetooth. You can use it with the Bookoo app. You can use it with the Bean Conqueror app, which is free. And the great thing with Bean Conqueror app, I currently also have a difluid R2 extract for the TDS readings. Because I have 2 different products from 2 different brands, I like using the Bean Conqueror app because I can mix and match different company Bluetooth products. It also works with the Odyssey Espresso app and the Decent espresso machines. I set it up one time. The moment I go into an app on my phone that's either the Bookoo or the Bean Conqueror app, it'll connect, it knows it's there, and then the blue dot for the Bluetooth will appear. I don't know, it was a mouthful. At the end of the day, all the apps do basically similar things. You save your bean information, you brew, and you track your brews and your coffees. A lot of times you can write notes and you have different information that you can extract in different graphs. The Bookoo app, needs a little bit of work in my opinion. I hope that they make some improvements on it. Small things that irked me. Things and the way that the interface was presented didn't really make sense to me in terms of like drop downs or the alignment or just like small things like that I didn't love, but it is fully functional and you can do everything you need to do in there. When you save a brew, you can't name it before you save it. So you save it, then you have to edit the name after. It's just like small annoyances. You can also use the app for firmware updates should there be any. Something that they do not have but would be cool to have is presets for flow rate. So example, let's say you have a pour over flow and as you're learning to be better with your flow on the chart, you know, it would be cool if in real time you could see your flow and then you had a baseline in the back for you to try to emulate so that you could reference that as you're pouring in real time. They don't currently have that. I did bring that up to them. Maybe that's a feature that they will use. I don't know how useful that would be. You could also control the scale through the app. When I am brewing, because it's Bluetooth, it's gonna send that data onto my app and it will auto-populate the weight of my final brew into my brewing parameters that I'm saving for that particular brew, that extraction for that day, for that moment. That is really cool. It means there's a lot less manual having to track like, okay, it's 32.2 grams, okay, 32.2 grams. It's like, no, it will auto feed that data into my app. It's a nice additional life quality improvement. Now there is another product that they sent me that I unfortunately cannot use because I have a Breville dual boiler and I do not have an E61 group head. I really wish I had an E61 group head, but this is the ESPRESSO monitor. You would add this in an E61 group head. It comes with different parts that you need. This would give you real-time pressure profiling of your espresso while it's happening because you would also install this in the right place in your machine. Pairing these two together, both Bluetooth, you would be able to get so much more value out of this. What's really cool is that they also have another kit. You could buy this bundled with this pressure gauge that's analog. They've made it very easy to mix and match, but I could pair this with an analog pressure reader and I could install this onto a flare. You can pair it with other Bluetooth coffee scales like the ACAIA, which is one of the more popular ones, but actually I would just get this because this is actually cheaper than the ACAIA anyway. It's a pressure sensor with a delay of 0.1 seconds, so it's super snappy and responsive. It's got some heft to it as well. You do also have to charge it. It has a 180-day recharge. It's low power Bluetooth technology. It's Bluetooth 5.0. So is this for you? I mean, listen, if you're in the market for a new scale and you have the money and you have the funds and you do see this as a quality of life improvement where you don't have to track things manually as much, you can connect it to different apps. I think it's great. I love that I have a Bluetooth scale and that I can have more control and more monitoring of my brews. Truthfully, I don't do it all the time. Sometimes I'll get into a nerd mode and nerd phase where I just want to track everything and I find it super interesting, and now I have the TDS reader and I'm testing it out and I'm just like having fun tracking things. You know yourself best. Is it a must-have? No. At the end of the day, a regular coffee scale will do just fine, but it is well priced for what it is. This is 180 Canadian. Even like lower end but decent enough coffee scales are gonna run about 50 bucks. So yes, there is a price difference from 50 to 180, but it's not like jumping to an ACAIA where you're now in the 200s and 300s, and affordable considering it's Bluetooth, super well built. It's beautiful to look at and touch. But let's say you don't need a fancy Bluetooth app and you do want something that is good bang for your buck, really reliable, really good quality coffee scale. You could check out this review of another coffee scale I did that is about 50 bucks, 40 to 50 bucks price range. Depends on your currency, depends on the conversion rates as well. But if not, you can also check out this video that might be of interest to you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.